Live from the Export Beer Garden studios, you're listening to the BYC, where it's good to be back after a short hiatus. Not so good as the fact that we are no longer the World Test champions. That mantle having been snatched away by those filthy, dirty, cheating Australians. In today's podcast, we'll also be covering off the upcoming Ashes series, where we can only hope the English do a bit of baseball damage and bring the cocky men in yellow down a peg or two. And to kick us off, Dylan Cleaver, this World Test Championship,
yes.
Before we really delve down into it, how stupid was Matthew Hayden's hat?
That's what greeted the coverage, right? That's the first thing you saw when you turn on the telly and you haven't seen a bit of a cricket for a while. You're so pumped up and want to get into it.
Yes.
And that... I don't think I'm being unfair to say that fat face.
Yeah, fat face.
Staring out at you with that stupid Akubra hat where he's just screaming to the world, I'm an Aussie, mate.
Yeah, totally. I mean, who does he think he is, Paul Ford? Crocodile Dundee, for God's sake?
Yeah, a couple of conkers short only. And, of course, I mean, he sort of presented as Justin Langer's husband during a lot of the coverage as well. I mean, the old partnership reformed and so much love, so much... it should be forbidden love between those two. I got sick to death of them reminiscing together, boning on about Australian stories from the dressing room from the 90s. So it was incredibly aggravating. I guess there was no Simon Doull and there was no Danny Morrison just to sort of balance things up from a New Zealand point of view.
That's true.
And I tell you what, that Justin Langer has got a voice for the silent movies.
Yeah, doesn't he? God almighty, God help us all. Hey, so the Mace is gone. First and foremost, fellas, does one test match work for you? I'll give you my answer. Yes.
Can I sit on the fence here?
No.
Okay.
No.
I actually think it should be a 3-test series.
Oh.
But it's never going to happen.
No.
So, I'm wishing for something that is almost impossible. Although I thought Rohit Sharma, obviously bitter at losing 2 World Test Championship finals in a row.
Yes.
But I thought he did have a valid point in that saying, why is this the only window? There is actually a window before the IPL. He's obviously forgetting that there is a Southern Hemisphere summer. But he did mention that. And look, I think, the power of cricket has shifted. There's no reason why you can't have a series, 1 test in Ahmedabad, the next test in Brisbane, maybe a decider at Lord's.
Yeah, no, you see, that's just too fart-arsing around for me, Dylan. It just draws it all out unnecessarily. That's my opinion. Yeah. I like the 1 test format, Paul Ford. You?
Yeah, I'm on board with it as well. And it is hilarious that we're talking about the final being a 3-test series potentially when New Zealand doesn't even get to play 3 tests in a series, so we'd be massively disadvantaged if we ever made it through.
We'd be exhausted by the third.
Fall over by the third.
What we had on their hands. I guess if I was going to change it, and I don't think I would just make sure it was always at Lord's. Another option that I did think about was if you win it. So say today, Australia can pick where it's going to be, and it's got to be a neutral venue. So they're the holder of the Thomas Light made silver Mace, and they get to say in 2 years we're going to play the final at this venue, and they just get to call that. But it can't be in Australia.
Bulawayo, yeah.
That's fine.
Yes.
If they want to go there, that's good. And then everyone gets to crack on.
Carry on.
The last thing I was just going to say was, I quite like the fact that India didn't like it and were whinging about the fact that it was 1 game. But once we have India not happy about things, it makes me nervous about what comes next.
Yeah, fair point. And just on that, in terms of it being played at the Oval there in London, I love it. I don't have an issue with that either. Do you?
No, I like the Oval. In
Yes.
fact, look, this might be sacrilege, but I actually prefer the Oval for a 5-day test than Lord's.
Yes.
I love Lord's for that 1 day. It's just special. It's like going to a museum. But I actually like the atmosphere of South London. And,
yes.
And
Paul Ford, your thoughts? The Oval, yes, tick.
I'm happy with the Oval or Lord's. I think I was just trying to find out where the final is for the next cycle. I think it's back at Lord's.
Yes. Yeah, it is Lord's.
So that keeps that. I'm happy with that.
I feel like more of an occasion played in London at one of the great grounds rather than when New Zealand won it on the outskirts of Southampton next to a motorway interchange.
And it's awesome that the crowd was, I assume it was a sellout. If it wasn't, it was bloody close to it. I mean, there was a real atmosphere, and that's massive credit. I mean, you forget that it's on neutral territory, and, the Indian fans came out in droves. There were lots of Aussies there too, and I think that's where London is magical. It is such a crossroads of the world, right? So, that works for me. Although, I've got to say, I think it would work pretty damn well at the MCG, to be honest, as well, if they were going to do something where they mixed it up.
Yeah, fair point. The overrates, fellas, disgraceful, but does anyone care anymore?
I certainly care.
When I was an umpire, that was one of my biggest bugbears, truly, is really slow overrates. No excuse for it. And I used to bloody hammer the captains about it and get to the point of deducting points. Come on, let's play it properly. Let's get those overs up, Dylan Cleaver.
Yeah, it's actually pissing me off now. And
yes.
look, Australia would... am I going to get hammered for saying this? Australia would probably be 2-time World Test champions were it not for overrates. So in some ways, we've got to be very thankful that they screwed it up last time and New Zealand made the final because...
Adam, can we delete that, please?
Deducted.
Goodness me.
But it does. It annoys the hell out of me. And there's no genuine reason.
No, there isn't. And that is what's really frustrating about it. Just get on, and people pay good money to come and see the match. And they're just fart-arsing around out there, Paul Ford. Someone's got to put a rocket up them.
Yeah, that's right. Well, there's enough bloody officials associated with test matches that there should be plenty of rockets being fired off. You do get the sense that the umpires are quite passive. Where's the match referee? Why don't they come out and do some dramatic microphone chat like they do during the tennis? At the end of the day, to win a test match, you've got to get 20 wickets. So you've got to bowl as many balls as possible. So, it sort of frustrates me. I do think as well, maybe this was a factor. I mean, the weather was good, but there was a 6th day to dip into for this match in particular. So I think that might be a psychological factor. Oh, we've got another 90 overs or whatever it is up our sleeve.
You can't do it for overrates, though.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So maybe they should have just made that. If you don't get the overs in, we're going to spill over into the 6th day. Everyone makes more money. The players have to keep playing. I think fines don't work, right? The players don't care. They're getting paid a $1 million a year, so that does nothing. Getting banned in a match because of a slow overrate during a final, that's hopeless as well. So if you're going to have a penalty, it's got to be in the game on the day. Maybe runs, I don't know. Maybe it's kind of whoever's been farting around the most gets to choose what the penalty is or something. And also you should have to refund all of the spectators that paid a ticket. You have to refund them the 12 overs or 7 overs or whatever. That proportion of the money goes back to the spectators because they're the ones that are ultimately getting ripped off.
Yeah, I think you want to be tutuing around with, the scenario of deducting runs or, that sort of stuff. But I reckon the threat of losing the game, even if it is a final, would actually be enough to make them go, Jesus, we need to take this seriously and get a move on here.
What about the stocks?
Yes.
Fair trading?
Yeah.
Or the gallows.
The actual old-fashioned stocks.
And people just get vegetables and throw. Yeah, okay. And sure, why not?
You pay good money to come in Stark's been farting around at the top of his run-up. He goes in the stocks for 5 minutes at the end of the game, maybe, limit it to tomatoes.
What about bringing back the lash?
Yeah.
They get lashings.
Can we also put into the gallows as gallows, that means we're killing them. That's probably a little bit over the top.
Yeah.
Beheading them. We don't need to do...
maybe, how about this? They lose a finger.
Perfect. Well, Pat Cummins has only got 9.5 fingers, so maybe he's already had some overrate issues. Could we also put in those stocks the people that have actually been responsible for having the batsman pull out because they're in a high-vis vest walking through the field or through the batsman's vision? I think they should be in there too. Their punishment.
Fair call. Now, as much as it pains me to say it, fellas, Australia is a pretty handy side. They're in great nick at the moment, going into the Ashes series, which we'll delve into a little bit later on in the podcast. But they're looking good, Dylan Cleaver, and you can't begrudge them the victory, though I have a few words to say about something that Cameron Green said.
Okay, well, hold on to those words for a second. They are very good. Scott Boland might be the greatest bowler that we never knew existed 2 years ago.
How good is he, man?
I mean, that guy just comes in and does not bowl a bad ball.
Yeah.
It's phenomenal, and he gets the odd one to jack back in, whether that's wobble seam, three-quarter seam, a complete fluke, whatever you want to describe it as. But he's a serious weapon, and he may not play Edgbaston.
Yeah, well, what a dilemma for the Australians, and a good one, Paul Ford, Hazelwood or Boland. But Boland's that classic bowler that, as you were sort of alluding to there, Dylan, just bowls the channel so beautifully. And he's a stocky bastard. He's nippy.
Yeah, I saw him described as burly.
Yes,
and I thought that was fair. And it reminded me, he reminds me of Lenny Smallin of Mice of Men, the great John Steinbeck book, who also was described as burly, loyal, kind, and not very intellectual. And I thought that, I don't know about Scott Boland's intellectual levels, but yeah, formidable bowler. And Simon Burnton in The Guardian had a great line about him this week. He said, there's not so much a spring in his step as a winter, deep, dark, and foreboding. And I thought that was a lovely summary. But the Australians, God, this was an emphatic win. And we like to cast a few stones and I guess hope that they're not the best red ball team on earth. But the fact is that they are, and they just played like they always do. None of this dicking around with baseball or any nonsense. Just score heaps of runs in the first innings.
Yes.
Get a lead by bowling relentlessly, blaze away to extend the lead, put the screws on and win by 200 runs. I mean, it felt like by the end of that Smith and Head partnership, India were just massively on the back foot and they never recovered.
Yeah, and I think you singling out those two players there. Smith, how good is he at the moment? And you were talking before we came on air today, Dylan, about how good he is at batting in English conditions. And Travis Head, who kind of, at the start of his career, kind of floundered a little bit, never quite, he's really... He seems to me a batsman that knows exactly now what he has to do and how he's going to play the game. Shit, he's good, Dylan.
Yeah, I know, and really tricky in the fact that he's a nice Australian.
Yeah.
So you never quite...
Well, I don't believe that, but yeah.
Oh, apparently he's one of the greats. Yeah, but the way he goes at it, I mean, he is kind of, dare I say it, he is kind of Bazball.
Bazball, yeah.
Trav ball,
yeah. And Stephen Smith, I mean, he's just impeccable in English conditions because he knows where his off stump is better than everyone because he's got those weird idiosyncrasies that lines him up perfectly every time. That game was one, which I watched far too much of it. That game was won in the second session of the first day.
Yes.
They were actually tricky conditions to bat in. India won the toss and suited them. It was the right call. The ball was, the new Duke's ball was doing stuff. It was going up and down. Warner looked all at sea, though, to his credit. He got a few runs. Khawaja, a duck. Mana struggled. They were there. The conditions were there for India, were there mostly seam attack to really thrust home the advantage, and Travis Head just took it away from them in just a glorious innings. And they never bowled short to him.
Yeah.
And once they started bowling short to him, he looked in a little bit of trouble, so maybe the English are looking at that too.
Definitely Paul Ford.
A chink in the armour there, perhaps, Dylan. Yeah, it's going to be interesting for the Ashes, obviously, how Head goes. And I think he did that classic thing where he came off. I mean, I think your point is fair, and I think the point he was making is fair. But I do love it when you're a guy that scores 150 and he came off and said, "God, that was tough to bat out there. If you get it in the right areas, there's a lot there for the bowlers. On a good length. It's been really hard work out there, which I rated. There's been a lot of chit chat too about his strike rate. So I had a quick look, and so in this cycle of the World Test Championship, Will Jacks is at the top of the strike rates. Ben Duckett has left 6 deliveries in the last 720 deliveries that he's faced in Test cricket. That's pretty remarkable. The guy Kirtsey from South Africa. Then it is Trent Boult on the strike rate list, the strike rate of 92.
Yeah.
And
he just goes and has a tonk, though, doesn't he?
Yeah.
That's right. And then Brooke. So Trent Boult's strike rate in the World Test Championship is higher than Harry Brooks, and then it is Travis Head, but pretty remarkable stats. Strike rate of 82, 1,389 runs at an average of 56. He's on fire.
Hey, and of course, this game not without a little bit of controversy. I read the quote of Cam Green's there, basically saying the Indian fans are salty about the fact that they've lost another final, and maybe the ball touched the grass, but they're not going to engrave that on the trophy. in effect, Dylan Cleaver, what he's saying is the Indian fans are salty because we're dirty, filthy, cheating Australians, and they're not going to write that on the thing, so sod off.
Yeah, I thought he caught it. I thought he caught it at first, and
Yes.
it wasn't till, was it Shubman Gill found that angle, which does look as if the ball's resting slightly on the tops of the grass. But, yeah.
They're so humble, aren't they, in
Yes.
victory?
Aren't they? And like Cam Green, he's a guy that I still feel like he's got so much more to come.
Yes.
And he had a decent final, but the catch will be what he's remembered for in India. And he's got an IPL to go back to next campaign, so that'll be interesting.
Cam Green's, he is an interesting character because, there's big raps on him, and there's no doubt Paul Ford, he's a quality player. He's quite a fearsome bowler, and maybe the batting hasn't quite taken off like people were anticipating, but you do feel with him at some stage he's going to really blossom.
Absolutely, and I think he feels like a bit of a man-child at the moment. He's got the weight of the world on his shoulders, a lot of pressure. Everyone's talking him up as the next big thing, and I think he's had a pretty decent start to his career. And I think the Australians are actually doing a pretty good job of keeping him out of too much of the carry on. But when you take a controversial catch like that, you're gonna feel the wrath of the fans and the players. And Shubman Gill throwing that tanty, God, it was quite funny. Like on Instagram, he put clap, 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 well done Australia. And then on Twitter, he put magnifying glass, face palm. So, he certainly knows his audience. There's that catch. I mean, we could do a whole podcast on that rule, but the massive cricket nerds of the universe, there are endless pieces written about that. And there is this part of the rule which is around the practical application, but basically it says that as long as the fielder has complete control of the ball before the ball hits the ground, then it is out. And I guess that's what the umpire ruled, and that's kind of the end of it. I know we love to say that Cameron Green cheated, but really it was up to the umpires, and if the umpires have stuffed it up, God, it wouldn't be the first time, let's be honest.
Well, what I found actually interesting about that too, in terms of Cam Green, because he's been described and talked about as very much a quiet, unassuming, sort of almost shy kind of character. So it was quite a bold quote of his, I thought, of all the Australians, I wouldn't have picked him to make that quote. You know what I'm saying?
Do you think he was a few Fosters deep?
Yeah, maybe. A few beers, he's down the tube. Now, look, we have to ask the question too, did India stuff up regarding Ravi Ashwin?
Yeah, I think so. They do not like picking him in England, do they?
Yeah, they don't.
And I suspect he's not the most popular bloke in that squad, and they're looking for reasons not to pick him. I mean, I don't know that, but it always seems like he's the sacrificial lamb in England. And they keep picking Jadeja, and Jadeja, I reckon, is a guy they keep picking on potential for the last 10 years.
Oh, I love Jadeja. I won't have a word against him. He's a great player and does that great thing with his bat. But listen.
Can he bowl?
Just on the Ashwin thing, though, and you guys need to help me out there, because this is something that's circulated around for a long time, is that he's not very popular with his teammates and he's not very popular with other cricketers. Do we know why?
I don't think he's a very deferential person. I think some of those Indian overlords quite like a bit of deference, and I don't think that's his go-to. He's a pretty cocky bugger, and I imagine, not getting selected and being the world number one bowler, it's just going to feed into that. And probably he's been quite magnanimous this week about congratulating Australia and all those sorts of things. But, geez, he could have been an absolute force out there, particularly against the Australian left-handers. Yes. Warner, Khawaja, Head would have been quite useful for him to get out early, and Carey. So, yeah, look, I don't know. I think we're going to talk about Colin Munro in a wee while, and it's got the Munro situation's got echoes of this Ashwin situation. But on the stats, just to finish, he's played 7 tests in England. He's got an average of 28. He's taken 18 wickets. So it's not like he's got some atrocious record.
Yeah.
He did bring the man cab back into fashion too, which has probably not helped his popularity.
Right, okay. Yeah, because I've always heard that about him. And on the field, I have to admit, he pisses me off because he's so over the top with his appeals and so forth.
Well, he always gets sledged, doesn't he? Like on the stumps, Mike, you hear the keeper, I think it was Tim Payne.
Yeah, Tim Payne.
Going, even your teammates can't stand you.
Yeah. All
they know that he'll get wound up. But it's sort of, I don't know, when they didn't pick him, like you can make a case for picking the four seamers, but there's something muddled about your thinking when you're doing that. If you've got a guy like Ashwin, who's a really good bat as well, let's not forget
he's handy
those
with the bat.
lower order
5
runs,
test
very,
centuries.
very helpful.
Yeah, 4, I think.
Just pick your
Maybe
best
5.
11 for a final.
Yeah.
Just pick your best 11 and get on with it.
Hey, Chris Gaffney, one of the umpires. Now, I'm assuming that that those two umpires, was it Illingworth as well?
Illingworth and Gaffney.
Gaffney, yeah. Generally with these things, particularly with like a final scenario, you get selected for that sort of on performance, I would assume.
Yeah. Well, I think there's 4 umpires that are head and shoulders above.
Yes.
Gaffney, I wouldn't have put Illingworth in there, but maybe you have to now. Kettleborough.
Yes.
And Goff. Is it Michael Goff?
Yes, Goff. Yeah, I agree.
And Damasceno.
Here's the thing about
as well.
Gaffney. I think he's really rated by the players. And, I remember he had that shocking day in the test match in Australia where he made like 5 wrong decisions in really quick succession. And the great Shane Warne was talking about actually a lot of the decisions that he made I would have given as well. They look good. But I think he's one of those guys that's pretty forthright with the players and well respected by the players. Bloody great to have, a New Zealand umpire in the final of, that calibre.
I have noticed he smiles less and less now.
Yes.
And I don't know whether it's that Dunedin Presbyterian thing really kicking in strong as he gets older.
Any opportunity to get the boot in.
Is he a Presbyterian?
Dunedin folk.
Presbyterian.
What happened?
I presume everyone in Dunedin is a Presbyterian. That's just my default setting. Right?
Are the umpire rankings published anywhere? I was just having a quick look while we were talking. I couldn't see them. It feels like a thing that would be quite good to publish.
Yes, yeah. But, I rate him really highly as an umpire.
He's
I think he's
fantastic.
really good.
Yeah.
And
Apart from the overrates thing.
yes, yeah. And you look at the controversy, who were we playing in the test matches where he was calling them for bowling down the leg side?
Sri Lanka.
Yes, yeah. And that took a bit of balls to do that.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So good on him. Now,
He might have got him the points that he required from his
quite
assessors
possibly.
to get into that final. He was also a very good bat, and I'm kidding about Dunedin, obviously. He was a very good bat, and he would be in my top 5 players who never played for New Zealand.
Yes. Waiting. Now let's move on to a very salivating sort of prospect, the Ashes starting on Friday, fellas. Free to air, I believe, on Spark.
So it's free. It's on Spark, the first test,
Yes.
before they wind down their stream, but it's free. Anyone can just go in. You might have to log in. I guess Spark want your data somehow.
I can't remember
so,
my password. That's the problem.
So you log in, you get that for free, and then by test 2, it switches to TVNZ Plus.
Yeah. How good, fellas. I mean, anyone that loves the game of cricket, you have to say, Dylan, that the Ashes series, summertime in England, how good, man. How good is this going to be?
Oh, I can't wait.
Yeah.
It's just, it's a highlight. It's those winter nights that can be a little bleak at times. It brightens them up. That first session, which is, I believe, the first test is at Edgbaston. It's going to be magnificent. Edgbaston is probably the most atmospheric in terms of, lunatic crowds.
Yes.
So right from ball 1, it's going to be all on.
I
don't need to ask you, Paul Ford. You're fizzing, I can tell.
Oh, totally. No, it's bloody exciting. And, I can't remember if we've talked about it on here before, but, we're talking about this potentially being the last series of this ilk where the players are shoulder tapped and decide to play, right? In future years, it's going to be ringing head office and checking that player X can be released from their franchise contract to come and play in the English summer, when they may very well be required in Los Angeles or something, or San Francisco, to be playing Major League Cricket.
Yeah.
So, I think it's got a feeling of kind of meaning even more this time around, and it's incredibly exciting. There's going to be lots of bleary-eyed stumbling into the office and logging on late to work because it's going to be a magnificent series, and it does feel like there is this: can Bazball work against Australia? Can Australia kind of neutralise it? And can England get Steve Smith out. That sort of feels like what it's going to come down to.
Yeah. Slightly different build-ups, of course, going into this Ashes series. The English against the Irish, obviously Australia versus India. I don't think that matters too much, as long as the players get a bit of a trot, Dylan.
Yeah, and England did what they had to do against Ireland. They didn't make it close. They've been playing county cricket, most of them.
Yes.
Quite regularly. They're back into the championship rounds now. I wouldn't worry too much about the disparity in the quality of the opposition. For the
just on a point that Paul Ford actually made there, and it's a question that we do, that I think is the sort of essence of this series. Is Bazball going to work against the Australian bowling attack?
Do you know what? The Australians seem to be making so much noise about the fact they don't think it can work against their attack that I'm wondering if they are secretly
worried about it.
Shitting themselves.
Well, what we do know, Paul Ford, is that the English are going to go for it. They're not going to back down and suddenly play a different kind of game. It's worked for them. They're just going to go hell for leather, and it might be the only way to actually knock the Australians off their sort of onto their heels a little bit. You know what I mean? By attacking them.
Oh, totally. And I think the way that England are playing, the stats, minimum 10,000 balls. Looking at data from teams that have faced that number of deliveries, Bazball is head and shoulders quicker than any other era in cricket. So they got 4.65 runs per over when Ben Stokes is the captain. The great Australian team of the late 90s, early 2000s, Steve Waugh's team, they went at 3.66 runs per over. So A, it's real, B, it's working, and two, and C, they're not going to not do it. I think that the injury to Josh Hazelwood, and to be clear, this is a long-standing injury. I'm not suggesting this is just a new thing, but I think that he's going to be missed massively. I think he's a hard guy to start smashing around endlessly. He hasn't played a test since January. He's only played 4 test matches in the last 2.5 years. So, you'd expect that Boland's going to be in there. And whilst he's a fantastic bowler and built for English conditions, far out once.
He would never have bowled against anything like this before, though, right?
It's bowling against a couple of freight trains, right? Duckett, Bairstow, Stokes, Brook. It gets you. It feels exciting.
Yeah,
exciting.
And actually, whilst we were singing the praises of Boland, and rightly so, he's a bloody good bowler. He is very consistent, which actually might play into the Bazball that they go, this guy's there or thereabouts pretty much all the time. Let's go for it with, and try and knock him off his line. But yeah, it's going to be fascinating to watch, isn't it?
Yeah, I reckon he can get inside Stark's head.
Yes,
he can get loose. I think you're exactly right with Hazelwood. I think he can be got to because he is metronomic. Cummins is the one that worries me a bit.
Yeah.
Cummins will keep running and he'll keep hitting the deck hard. He just doesn't bowl a length, and that makes it easy to hit because he's taller, he's stronger, and he can be rapid when he needs to be.
Some issues selection-wise, Paul Ford, for the English. No Folks, no Jack Leach. In comes Moeen Ali.
Just bizarre. I'm keen to hear. I know Dylan's madly in love with Ben Foakes. I'm very keen to hear his thoughts on Johnny Bairstow taking the gloves and Foakes being completely left out. It seems very harsh to me. And the Moeen Ali selection. So Jack Leach out injured. Moeen Ali hasn't played red ball cricket for 2 years. So he hasn't played any red ball county cricket. Nothing. His last outing in a test match was against India in September 2021. He took. And in the last Ashes that he played, I think it was something like he took 3 for 172 and didn't play for England for 18 months. So, hardly a terrifying presence to be selected, and just seems like a slightly...
stopgap.
Yeah, like a very unusual kind of selection. And so it's going to be interesting to see how he goes. That said, lower order runs, he can bat. And, if Jack Leach can do it, I guess Moeen Ali is probably going to be about the same. But Leach has been quite extraordinary. Really.
Yeah, he's been good. But surely they've got other options.
No, they don't really. And this is the interesting thing. There's 18 bloody counties in England, and their spin bowl, the county career is terrible for spinners.
Right.
So they could have gone Don Bess, who's tried and failed. They could have gone Dawson, who's tried and failed. Will Jacks doesn't look like a bowler yet. That Liam Livingston's kind of all over the shop. That Rehan Ahmed probably looks the best of the lot, but jeepers, it's a big ask. He's barely played. So Moeen Ali is, I believe, actually the best option. I agree with that selection. It's just funny that he's retired from Test cricket. He's been offered to come back once, and then he didn't fancy a trip to Pakistan, so he pulled out of that one. And now he's thinking, oh, yeah. Or as he said, it feels like a free hit for him. But I do think one of the big reasons is he does, like he's going to come in at an 8 or a 9. Imagine, like you're bowling, you've got England 7 down, they've been trying to hit you all over the park. You think, oh, finally we're into the tail. And Moeen Ali comes out with his 3 Test centuries and batting at about 80-something strike rate. But
a license to thrill under Bazball, yeah.
I do not get the folks one. I just think that's...
Yeah, he's been fantastic for them.
Fantastic, and he could be a glue guy for them that they may need occasionally. It's just this real, like Baz has set his stall out and Stokes has set their stall out, and they'll say, Zach Crawley is our man. We're going to back him. We don't care how many times he fails because he's going to win us a test every now and then. It just doesn't look like he's good enough to do that.
Yeah.
Like I could be egg on my face.
Do you think that's what it is?
Yeah, it is because Bairstow's probably said, hey, look, I'd rather not open. So they go, oh, okay, right, so you're in the middle order. And they've got Zach Crawley's their man, so no room for folks.
Yeah.
And I think it's a genuine mistake.
Crazy. I think it's crazy. He's
Come
been
back to me in a month.
so solid for them, Paul Ford.
Oh, totally. Yeah, I agree. And there was a bit of shenanigans going around. Dylan mentioned there Bairstow, and then there was potentially to open, and there was a bit of chatter about that, Stokes isn't 100% able to bowl yet, so maybe they could just go completely McCullum roulette and put Stokes in at the top of the order and keep Folks and Bairstow in there. And Crawley as well. So, yeah, I don't know. I was just going to say on the Moeen Ali thing, there's a great... him getting selected, it's amazing. He was away on a family holiday up in the Cotswolds with his wife and his parents and his kids and stuff, and
it's lovely.
Gets a one-word text from Ben Stokes, Ashes ? And his reply is lol. That's it. And then he had to get to the bottom of it, and then boom, a few days later he's at training. There was a fire alarm. And then, he's standing outside kind of the ground amongst all this sort of chaos and going, 3 days ago I was in the Cotswolds with my family with my feet up. So, I wish him well. I think he's a great cricketer, and, I hope IBK's great, actually.
Well, bring it on Friday, I say. And you're right, Dylan, there's nothing like a wintry night, just getting nice and putting the fire on, a few beersies, watching the cricket, Test cricket in the summer of England. Beautiful. Waiting. Now, New Zealand matters. We were talking about Colin Munro. He's come up a couple of times. He says he would have thrived in Bazball.
Yeah. And
whatever.
Oh, he would have, and he said it kind of tongue-in-cheek, but there was some more edgy stuff in that interview, actually, and I tend to agree with him, where he said, his numbers, 51 average first-class cricket. He's played a lot of first-class cricket, scoring at 13 tons, scoring at a really good clip. And he could kind of understand not getting in when McCullum was playing because McCullum played that role. He said, but then McCullum retired and he's looking at these people getting picked and going, really? How are they in this team before me? And I kind of get it. And what Munro didn't address probably in that interview was there was a perception of him just being a maybe not an easy fit.
Yeah, he's quite honestly, I've umpired him a few times. He is a very difficult character. And even his own teammates, there's a lot of chat about it. Even his own teammates are like, just settle down. And just on that front, controversy and him being a bit... I had a little chat with someone that shall remain nameless, but was very much in the deep end of talking about Martin Guptill and his treatment by New Zealand cricket and the New Zealand coach. And this particular person sort of laid it all out, what had happened, and all the... I had no idea. And I can't actually go into it because it's very controversial.
Yeah, you've dropped some big hints there.
Yeah.
Well, I look forward to listening to the Between Two Bears podcast about this at some point.
Yes.
But,
Hey,
But I was going to say on Munro, he should be annoyed that he wasn't. We want players to be annoyed that they're not selected for New Zealand, but I think, there is something a little bit. I mean, don't get me wrong. I read the article, and it was a great scoop of a story, but 10 years after the fact to be sort of whinging about stuff, I don't know. I didn't really need that. It was interesting that it was a good reminder to me that he had only played that one Test match. Some of the stuff that was swirling around at the time, though, they were waiting on Jesse Ryder to come back. James Franklin had just got injured. They threw him in there, and I had a quick look. Guys that he was sort of up against in that middle order, or was he a bowler? Like, I think we didn't quite know what he was, but it was Brownlee, it was Taylor, it was McCullum, Watling, Flynn, Broome, Tom Bruce, Henry Nichols was just coming through. Hamish Rutherford was sort of there or thereabouts. Peter Fulton. I mean, none of these guys. I mean, some of these guys are legends, but there's a few that aren't.
Yeah, there's a few that he's genuinely better than.
Absolutely. And I found this article by this guy called Dylan Cleaver in March 2017, and this is what you said.
I know him.
A growing legion of people think Munro's been royally shafted for reasons other than his ability. And I think, I think that's the thing. He probably just didn't have enough supporters in the cricket universe, possibly cause for a little bit of self-reflection.
Hey, Martin Guptill and Lockie Ferguson joined the LA Knight Riders.
Woo!
God.
Yeah.
For the inaugural Major League Cricket. This is not a ruse. The MLC 2023 will be a 6-team event scheduled from July 13th to 30th at the Grand Prairie Stadium in Dallas, Texas.
Yeah, that's great news. I actually am happy for Guppy.
Yeah, totally.
Because he hasn't had those IPL contracts. He hasn't really been able to fatten the wallet that other people with his kind of talent have been able to. So take the money, go for it. I'm a little more concerned about Lockie Ferguson, who we've always kind of held on to this hope that he could be part of our Red Bull scene, and it's not going to be, though, is it? I mean, this is his lot now. He's going to go around the world playing T20s for hire, and that saddens me a little bit.
Just another little sort of insight I got about from my secret source. Old lovely Trenti's done very well over the last couple of years, your T20 tournaments, etc.
$500,000 alone for that UAE one.
Yeah, well, I heard like 5 mil over the last year or two.
It's not bad, is it? I did see Corey Anderson is in this.
I might be wrong, or they might. My secret source might be pulling my ear. I don't know.
Corey Anderson's in this competition playing for San Francisco too. So I don't know if it's on TV or YouTube or however it goes, but this is $120 million US being poured into this venture. The other name that caught my eye, there's a guy called David White in the San Francisco team. Dylan, I'm not sure if that's meant to be Ollie White, but I suspect it may be the South African-born cricketer who's about 1,000 years old and moved to America a bunch of years ago.
In other news from the Shires, as we chat, the New Zealanders progress in the Blast and County Championship. We pass or fail all the participants. I'm assuming here, Paul Ford, as always, you've got the stats.
No, I don't actually.
Okay.
Hopefully
Dylan's got the stats then.
So what I was more surprised by was just how many New Zealanders playing in county cricket this year.
So am I. Daryl Mitchell.
Yeah, definite pass. He's been playing for Lancashire. In the Blast, he's got 275 runs at 55 at a 171 strike rate. He got a few wickets, and in the Championship, he's been going great guns. Got a ton in his first game. He's just at the peak of his powers.
Colin de Gronholm, Lancashire as well.
No, I'm afraid.
Is he a fail?
Colin has averaged 13.75 at the Blast, but amazingly was going at less than run a ball. A couple of wickets, and
Will Williams at Lancashire as well?
Yeah, stunning success. Unfortunately not available for New Zealand anymore because of taking up his English passport, but he has been very successful, 18 wickets at 21.
The man just mentioned Colin Munro at Notts.
Yeah, he got quite a few runs for Notts in the Blast and is sticking on to play for the Trent something or others in the 100. Nearly 300 runs, strike rate of more than 150.
Matt Henry?
Ooh.
Somerset?
Yeah, he's right on the cusp of a pass. He did take a 5-wicket bag in the Championship, but has not done a lot since.
Michael Bracewell.
Well, Terrible news. Terrible
news.
Yeah, he's just ruptured his Achilles. He'll be out for 9 months.
Oh.
He was probably on the cusp of getting a fail from me, but he can't now with that terrible news.
Santner.
Played for the same team, Worcester, in the Blast, and didn't get any wickets, but was pretty parsimonious and scored a bunch of nice runs down the order at 150 strike rate. Pass.
Doug Bracewell at Essex.
Nah, didn't do a lot. He scored in the championship. To be fair, he's got 17 wickets at 24.76. So we'll give him a pass, but he didn't nothing with the bat.
Yeah, that's pretty bloody good.
Yep.
God,
Sorry,
you're a hard man.
Sorry, Doug.
Matt Quinn at Kent.
What a revelation. Again, not available for New Zealand, but 12 wickets at 19.3. He's just a county championship monster for them.
Tom Latham, Surrey.
Only just got there. Failed in the first dig. I think he got a 50 in the second. Too early. Fail. Give him a fail.
I feel sorry for him because he has to bat behind the man bun Rory Burns and the Gurner King, Dom Sibley.
Yeah, he's batting 4. So there's an amazing scorecard just briefly from Surrey. They're chasing a big total. Dom Sibley is opened and is 61 not out after 230 balls or something, and some guy batting at 4 or 5 has already been out for 114 off 77 balls.
Ajaz Patel, Durham.
I'd love to pass him. So what have we got with Ajaz Patel at Durham, County Division 2? He's scored a few runs. He's got 10 wickets at 34.7. He might come into his own later in the season when the pitches get a bit drier.
And finally,
that's a fail then. Yep.
Finally, Henry Shipley at Sussex.
Again, he's really only just got there. He scored 41 in his only bat, and he's got 3 wickets at 29 so far, so we'll pass him.
Great stuff. The Cricket World Cup schedule is released. New Zealand versus final. What did you say?
Kind of.
Draft. It's a draft.
It's a draft, is it?
Yeah.
And New Zealand versus England, the tournament opener at Ahmedabad on October the 5th. New Zealand versus India, Dharamshala.
Yes.
October 22nd. New Zealand versus Australia, same place, October 29. Pune on Puny. How do you say that one?
Pune.
Okay. New Zealand versus South Africa, Pune, November 1st. And New Zealand versus Pakistan, Bengaluru, November 5th.
Bengaluru. Yeah.
Bengaluru, my bad.
Formerly Bangalore. We don't know about the other games yet.
We know, but they haven't announced any venues for the semi-finals. So, I mean, if you remember, we had the guy Toodles down from me, Josh, who was trying to organise a cricket trip. He's going to be, I wouldn't say he's going to be happy, but he's going to be less pissed off that he can at least get to some of these games. But, geez, the Indians make it hard. India are playing at 9 different venues. So they are doing the grand tour of India.
So New Zealand have got 9 games. Do we know where those other 4, which will presumably be West Indies, Sri Lanka, the Dutch, have they qualified?
I think we do know where those games are, and I think there's a pre-tournament for some of those final spots.
Yes.
So it's a bit of a shambles. Let's be honest. Jesus Christ.
Yes,
India.
indeed. Hey, well, listen, that brings us to the end of the podcast. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll be back, of course, next Wednesday, where we really delve into that first Ashes test. Boy, oh boy, how good's that going to be? Remember to download us, give us a rating of 5 stars.
We need 5.
We need 5, all right? And if you want to communicate with us, Paul Ford,
flick us an email to byc@beigebrigade.co.nz or slide into the DMs on Instagram or Facebook for the Beige Brigade or the Alternative Commentary Collective.
And just before we go, I actually was buttonholed in the street around the East Coast Bays by a man who said, "Don't you dare take weeks off. You're what keeps me going." So thank you to all the supporters that have been emailing in and offering words of encouragement. It does mean a lot.
good on you, mate. Thanks, mate.